Hi, guys. Greetings. How's it going? We are going to be talking about negotiating a competitive salary and benefits package today. But first, as a reminder, my name is Lisa Edwards. I am the CEO of The Exclusive Career, and I have two podcasts. So this one is the Exclusive Career Coach podcast, and this is episode 368. It's been going on since 2017. Oh my God. And then I also have the Exclusive Career podcast, which is focused on career development, executive presence. And last week I talked about developing your executive presence and covering the spoken word, your appearance, how you show up in high stress situations, and how to improve all of those things to get you into the executive ranks and to be successful in them. All right, so we're going to talk about how to negotiate a successful, or rather, how to negotiate a competitive salary and benefits package. And I covered this initially in episode 58, and that was more focused on what you can and can't negotiate when you're being hired. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about that, but also how to ask for a raise with your current employer, you know, what you can and can't say. For the purpose of this episode, I am going to assume that you are accepting the offer. So I'm not going to talk about when you shouldn't accept an offer, what are the red flags, those kinds of things. But I did cover that back in episode 58. All right, when to negotiate. If you are in the process of accepting an offer from a new company, you have one window and one window only to negotiate. Otherwise, it is just conversation that you're having. Once they make a bona fide offer, and then when you accept the offer, that's the window for negotiation. And a bona fide offer typically means you have received something in writing, and they will give you, unless they are, extenuating circumstances or they are not uh, a good company, they're going to give you a few days to a week, maybe even longer, to decide what you want to do about their offer. And whether you want to make a counter offer, that's the time to do it. If you are accepting a new position with your current employer, the rules are still going to be the same. So it's between the time that they say, hey, now we want you to be the senior vice president. Here's what we want to offer you. That's the same thing before you accept it. And then if you are negotiating a raise at your current job, this one's a little bit trickier because it really depends on the parameters of your company in terms of what time of the year can you ask. I was talking with a client just yesterday, works for a major bank that that you can't that you can't get a promotion unless somebody leaves. You have to go to another part of the bank if you want to move up unless someone moves leaves within their department. So there's all kinds of parameters that may be in place for asking for a raise with your current job. As a general rule of thumb, however, it's a good idea to ask for a raise right after you've had a significant win. The recency effect really comes into play, right? They're going to remember that and be favorably, inclined, hopefully. Now, do you have to negotiate? And this is really, we're talking about an external job offer, although it could be an offer at, for a promotion at your current job. In a word, you do not have to negotiate. If you love it, you can accept it as is. I still recommend that you take the time they give you, few days to a week, to think it over, really compare apples to apples to make sure that you're satisfied with it as is. And it also keeps you from looking over anxious and maybe desperate. Now, how do you prepare for a salary negotiation? Ask AI and then verify. That's really the answer. I'm going to give you some ideas here, but AI is the answer. Research salary ranges for the same or similar jobs in your geographic region. If you've worked with AI at all, you know you want to be very specific. I have I am being offered the position of blank with blank company, and give them all of that. It's going to be in this location. And ask AI also about the suite of benefits that that organization offers. See what you can find out. Always want to verify this with a second source. Might be on their website, might be someone that you know that works there or used to work there. A good way to frame all of this once you've done this research and you're looking for that range, and again, you want to make sure that these numbers that I'm about to encourage you to come up with are within that reasonable range. In other words, you haven't been incredibly overpaid or there's some other extenuating circumstance where it doesn't work. But in general, if you can determine your lowest base salary, so salary alone in the last 5 years, that's the low end. The high end then is your highest total compensation in the last 5 years. And I'm going to give you a sentence for how to put that together in a moment. Also, prepare your justification for where you believe you should be within the range. So again, we're looking at salary ranges, AI data, but we're also thinking about what did I make low end, high end? Where do I think I belong based on the job that I'm applying for, my qualifications, my any unique skills that are hard to find, that kind of thing. You want to make sure that the justification that you prepare is never about, you know, well, I have a big mortgage or I've got to pay off student loans. It's always about qualifications, what you will bring to the organization, the value that you will add. And then you want to practice your presentation so that you come across confident and willing to negotiate. In other words, this is not a hostage situation. You are negotiating, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, making sure that they know that they can get you if they get the price right. So next thing I want to cover is how does this actually go down? What does this actually look like? And there's a lot of scenarios that can occur during a salary negotiation phase. Increasingly, companies are posting a salary range, some kind of salary information in the job description. And in fact, last time I looked, there were 2 or 3 states that require it. I don't know if that's increased since that time, but I would love to see it be across the board required because I think it cuts out a lot of nonsense. And I also think that for those companies that are not paying market wage, it sort of exposes them. And they can either deal with the fact that they're being exposed as underpaying and, what does that mean about who we're going to get for candidates, or they'll do something about it. So I think it saves a lot of time and just cuts out a lot of nonsense. Other companies might ask you about your salary requirements in the application. They can do that in a couple ways. They may say something about for each of the jobs that you've had or maybe more recent jobs, what your salary may be starting and ending. They may say, what are your salary expectations? Or they may have that initial screening call where the recruiter's reaching out. And it could even be one of those where you're like, was that an interview? It felt like an interview, but it wasn't set up ahead of time. We just, they called me and I picked up the phone. It's an interview, by the way. And they may say something about that there. Back in the day, I was very clear in saying, hey, if they're trying to get salary information out of you right up at the front, I think it's because they're probably not willing to pay market value and they want to see if, you're out of their range. I don't think that anymore. I don't believe it. As I just said, it's kind of more efficient, it's more effective. Let's just find out up front if we're in the ballpark. We're not negotiating, remember. We're just talking about a ballpark and are we in it? So they may give you a range. So again, it could be that first call. Hey, we're looking for someone in the 175 to 200,000 range. Is that possible? And you have to decide whether that's possible for you or whether you want to stop the conversation. What does that look like? If you are hoping to, if based on your current salary, the next step for you, maybe this is a promotion, and based on your current salary, based on market data, you're like, I want to be at 325. Don't continue the conversation. You're never going to meet But if it's 225, if it's 230, there's a conversation to be had there. So here's the sentence that I would like you to use around that lowest number in the last 5 years and highest total comp. In the past 5 years, I've made between blank and blank. I'm looking to be in the range of blank, right? So it's a framework for where you've been and where you want to be. The next thing I want to cover is where do benefits come into play? So not the comp part, not the what shows up in my paycheck, but the rest of the pieces. And I want to give you some considerations. First of all, companies over a certain size are required to offer health insurance. So you want to find out what that looks like. The fact of it is a given, but how much will your out of pocket be? What is the total? What is your deductible? What does it cover? What doesn't it cover? Does it include dental and vision? Like all of those things have a real cost to them if you have to pay them. Whatever is going to come out of your paycheck that's real dollars. So you want to know all of that. The next thing, when they talk about other kinds of benefits, you want to make sure that you don't get, pulled to the shiny object syndrome, is what I call it. You want to think about it in terms of, is this something important to me that I will actually use? Now, let me make clear on this. If I go into a company at my age and they're talking to me about how great the childcare is, I don't need that. Now, that's not to say that I'm going to turn the job down because you have a childcare center and I don't need it. It simply means I'm not going, hear me say this, I'm not going to be swayed by a below market offer because of the benefit of a childcare center that I have no use for. The benefit of an on-site fitness center that I know I won't use. The whatever it is, if it's not relevant to you, don't be don't have shiny object syndrome and forget about what you need to make in terms of what shows up in your paycheck. I hope I've made that perfectly clear. You also want to think about, especially once you get an offer and you are countering, what do you want in terms of pay versus non-monetary benefits? So it's tricky to do both, right? You're kind of in two columns at the same time, and you're saying, hey, I want you to pay me more, but I want to be here less, right? Or I want you to pay me more and I want to work from home. So you want to be careful about that. The more research that you can do will help you to understand the likelihood of being able to negotiate in both columns, but really thinking about what your non-negotiables are. I had a client recently who said, it wasn't money wasn't so important to her. Like she wants to make a good living, but she's not so interested in negotiating a top dollar salary, but the PTO has got to be like she wants a month off every like from the beginning. And a lot of companies were talking to her about 2 weeks until she'd been there for, 5 or 10 years. So be aware of what your non-negotiables are versus your gee, wouldn't it be nices, and think about kind of those two columns. I would be remiss if I didn't go into a little bit more detail about leveraging AI. So I want to kind of take that a few steps further. In addition to asking AI for those typical salary ranges, you want to ask which sites can I check for verification? Where can I go find information? What salary databases are out there? What professional associations might have some salary data? What governmental data is out there to give me more? You don't want to just go on one data point from one AI source. Next, ask AI to translate those findings on salary data into a talking point that you could use in a salary negotiation. So you might say something like, turn these salary ranges into a 2 to 3 sentence explanation I can use with a hiring manager. And then what I would say is, if you take this extra step, this is even more effective. Ask that question, but also include the job description with all the requirements that they're asking for. Put the company name in there too, because then they'll know they can pull from what they know about the company, and put your resume in there. If it's open source, take out your personally identifiable information, but ask it, hey, based on my resume, based on the job requirements, based on the salary ranges that you've come up with and that I've come up with, what should I be, asking for? You want to be sure, as I've said, to always cross-check your numbers against at least one more independent source. Don't just go with the one AI source. You want to treat AI's range as a ballpark and not the gospel. Again, you're looking at other data points. And then you want to make sure when you ask the prompt about the salary ranges, be very specific about the role, the level, the geography. The company is helpful too, because they're going to be able to pull that. All right, final words of advice. You want to tell a story in the negotiation process that explains very precisely why your compensation request is justified, why it is makes sense. You want to make sure, and this is something I think I alluded to at the beginning, but this is something I don't know that we always think about. You want to make sure that they know they can get you with the right offer. They are not going to go to bat fully for someone that they're pretty sure is never going to take their offer no matter what. And they feel like there's just something about this person. I think they're using us as leverage for another company, or something doesn't feel right. You want them to know. You don't want to be overeager. You never want to tell them they are your first choice, because then you lose some negotiation power. But you want them to believe that they can get you if they get the right price, and never negotiate just for the practice. That can come back to bite you on the butt. Next, you want to understand that they may have constraints. And again, AI may be able to give you some of this with a larger company. They may have salary caps, and there's nothing they can do about it. This is the most we can pay for this role, no matter what you have and what you offer. So in that situation, that's really where you want to think about, okay, what are my non-negotiables? More PTO, flex time, work from home, hybrid, whatever it is that is non-monetary. Is there a bonus structure that you could bring up with them? What can you get that will satisfy you in the face of something that is immovable and non-negotiable? Next, if there are other companies in your pipeline, so this is going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because you do want them to know that they can get you if they have the right price. But if there are other companies in your pipeline that you believe might be making an offer soon, and they, particularly if they're more interesting to you, so like you're excited about this job, maybe at a B plus level, but maybe there was your first choice out there, it was an A plus, reach out to them to let them know you have an offer in hand. So you've got that time between receiving the offer and giving an answer to them or counter offering. This is the time that you reach out. And what I see over and over again is, in that situation, one of two things happens. The other company is either going to say, let me see what I can do, I'll get back to you. How much time do we have? Like, it's going to be that kind of language. Or they're going to wish you well, which is your cue that you are not being strongly considered. Maybe you are no longer in consideration at all. They'll wish you well, and you have your answer. And finally, and I think this is the most important of all, no negotiation is successful if it is for the wrong job. So make sure that you get the job right first and foremost, and that you are, when we talked about shiny object syndrome, that can also apply to a very exciting salary, especially if it's a salary that is not warranted for the level of the job or the industry. It seems disproportionately large. Why are they having to offer you that? What's going on there? What are they going to be asking you to do that they feel the need to pay you that much? So just make sure that you check in with your gut, do your homework so that you are negotiating for the right job for you. All right, I hope this has been helpful. I will see you back here in 2 weeks with another job search related topic. I have it planned, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. And next week, I'll be back on the exclusive career, talking about something wonderful along the lines of career management and executive development. See you later. Take care.